If you disappeared today, would she feel relief or longing? Answer quickly without overthinking, because deep down you felt that response before, not in words, but in the way the conversation cooled down, in the time it took her to reply, in the energy that simply vanished. There's a kind of silence that hurts more than direct rejection, and you know that silence. You were there, present, available, attentive, and yet replaceable. It's strange how no one warned you that doing everything right could make you invisible. There's a type of man who remains present even when he doesn't send any messages, not because he's playing games, not because he disappears out of fear, but because something about him stays, a feeling, an unresolved tension, a memory that doesn't fade easily. And perhaps what bothers you most is realizing that you were never that man. Not yet. You were the guy who over-explains, who tries to keep everything alive by force, who confuses connection with consistency, who believes that always being there is proof of worth, when in reality it might be exactly the opposite. Have you ever noticed how some women distance themselves precisely when you start to show yourself as more available? It's not a coincidence. It's not bad luck. It's emotional dynamics. Desire doesn't grow in absolute comfort. It grows in space, in the possibility of loss, in what isn't entirely guaranteed. When you're always there, her brain no longer needs to feel you. You become emotional background noise, a fixed presence, something that doesn't demand active attention. And what doesn't demand attention doesn't generate tension. And without tension, there is no attraction. Perhaps you tried to compensate for this by talking more, explaining things better, sending long messages, justifying your actions, trying to show who you are, what you feel, what you want. But each extra word took away a little of the mystery. Each explanation diminished the perceived value, not because you have no value, but because you gave everything away without her having to invest anything. And the human brain doesn't value what is abundant. It values what it can lose, what slips away, what isn't offered entirely on a silver platter. And here comes the most uncomfortable part. You're not forgotten because you're bad. You're forgotten because you're predictable. Because she knows exactly what to expect from you. She knows you'll respond. She knows you'll insist. She knows you'll explain. There's no emotional risk in losing you. And without risk, there's no real attachment, only habit, only routine, only lukewarm comfort. And lukewarm comfort doesn't leave you longing. Perhaps now some scenes are making sense, the change in her behavior, the way the interest seemed strong at the beginning and then slipped through her fingers. It wasn't a lack of chemistry, it was excessive accessibility. It was presence without impact. It was connection without tension. And the most curious thing is that the men who truly make an impact don't make an effort anymore. They do things differently. They understand when to speak, and especially when silence communicates much more. But that's something almost no one explains properly. And that's exactly where the story begins to change. If you keep doing exactly what you've always done, nothing really changes. The script repeats itself. The conversations start the same, end the same, and the ending, you already know it. At some point, you need to decide whether you'll continue reacting automatically or take control of your own presence. Change doesn't begin when it misses you. It begins when you stop offering yourself as a certainty. When you choose to act with intention, not out of anxiety. Maybe writing this already makes something clear to you, and if it does, leave it recorded. Not for me, for you. A silent sign that something has shifted inside you. Liking this video, subscribing, it's not about algorithms, it's about commitment to the version of yourself that doesn't beg for attention, but creates impact. And there's still something essential you need to understand, and that comes now. What almost no one tells you is that the men who stay in your mind don't do it by trying. They aren't busy constantly holding your attention, nor trying to prove their worth with every response. They simply occupy emotional space. And that changes everything, because emotional space isn't created with excessive words, but with inner presence, with a life that happens even when no one is watching. You feel this when you talk to someone like that. It's not anxiety. It's not haste. It's a firm calm that doesn't ask permission to exist. These men have direction, not in the cliché sense of goals written on paper, but in the way they move through the world. They know where they're going, even if they haven't arrived yet. And that generates something powerful: security. Not that performative security, but a silent security that doesn't need to be announced. And the curious thing is that female behavior responds to this almost unconsciously. She feels it. She relaxes. She gets closer. Because being near someone like that doesn't require effort, it requires curiosity. Have you ever noticed how insecure men react to everything? Every delay, every change of tone, every silence. Everything becomes a threat. Everything becomes a reason for an explanation. But the man who stays in his mind chooses his reactions. He doesn't ignore feelings, but he doesn't let them dominate him. He observes before acting. He responds when it makes sense, not when anxiety dictates. And this difference creates tension, a good tension, the kind that keeps the interest alive. He speaks less, but when he does, he leaves a mark. Not because he rehearses perfect phrases, but because he doesn't waste words. He doesn't try to fill every void. He understands that silence also communicates, and it communicates a great deal. The silence of a confident man shouts louder than 1,000 messages, because in that silence there is self-control, there is choice, there is perceived value. It is not absence, it is contained presence. While many get lost in endless conversations, trying to force something to stay alive, these men create experiences, moments, sensations, something that becomes associated with them. A look, a pause, a laugh at the right moment. The brain doesn't cling to long texts, it clings to emotions. And emotions are born from the unpredictable, from what is not entirely accessible. That's where emotional scarcity comes in. Not as a strategy, but as a natural consequence of having a life of your own. Perhaps this will challenge you a little, because it requires stepping out of the role of someone who waits for a reaction to feel validated. It requires stopping living according to the other person's response. It requires accepting that you don't control anyone's interests, only your own stance. And when that stance changes, the dynamic changes along with it. Not immediately, not magically, but profoundly. You start to notice that you don't need to prove anything, that you don't need to compete for attention, that you don't need to explain who you are. People feel it, and those who feel it, remember it. Those who remember it, compare it. And that's when you start to occupy the mind, even when you're not physically present. Not because you disappear, but because when you appear, it makes sense. Because you don't come burdened with expectation, you come whole. Perhaps now you understand that it's not about techniques, but about identity, about who you choose to be when no one is watching, about how you treat yourself when you're not trying to impress. And this change is silent, almost invisible, but powerful. And if any of this resonated with you, mark it, like an agreement with yourself, maybe by writing something simple, something like, "I change," or "I choose differently," not to show off, but to commit. Because the next part delves deeper into exactly that, and begins to separate those who only listen from those who truly transform. Now comes the part that almost everyone misunderstands: silence. Because for many, silence is punishment. It's fear. It's a game. It's a desperate attempt to provoke a reaction. But when you start acting from a new inner place, silence changes its meaning. It ceases to be absence and becomes a stance. It's not about disappearing to be noticed. It's about stopping exposing yourself aimlessly, stopping offering yourself as an automatic response. The right silence doesn't create confusion. It creates respect. The first shift happens within. You stop seeking validation. You stop measuring your worth by her response, by the time you watch the video, by the emojis you send or don't send. This hurts at first because it exposes how conditioned you were, but it also liberates you. Because when you don't depend on the reaction, you choose the action. And that choice completely changes the energy you transmit. You stop asking for space and start occupying it. When you are silent, what you do with that time says everything about who you are. Many use it to monitor, to imagine scenarios, to create stories in their heads, to suffer in advance. Unforgettable men use silence to grow, to align their own lives, to move forward in something that matters. And this is not motivational speech, it's psychological. The body changes, the posture changes, the gaze changes, and even from a distance, this is perceived. Because female behavior responds less to what you say and more to who you are when you are saying nothing. There's a clear difference between disappearing weakly and remaining silent strongly. The first carries resentment, the second carries center. When you reappear from that place, you don't need to announce anything. You don't need to explain. You don't need to justify. You speak as someone who is in no hurry, as someone who isn't afraid of losing. And this creates a silent inversion, because now she is the one who feels. She is the one who tries to read. She is the one who projects meaning. The mystery isn't in what you hide, but in the fact that you are no longer available for everything. Never explain silence. That's a rule few manage to follow. Explanation reveals guilt. It reveals a need for approval. Men of value don't justify themselves because they know where they were in their own lives. And that's not arrogance, it's emotional maturity. Those who explain too much are trying to be accepted. Those who don't explain convey that they don't need to. And that touches something deep. Because emotional scarcity isn't a lack of affection, it's a lack of unrestricted access. Perhaps you're realizing now that silence reveals dependence or strength. If silence weakens you, you are dependent. If it strengthens you, you become unforgettable. That's the rule. Simple, brutal, honest, and it doesn't depend on anyone but you. Because what truly stays in the mind isn't the man who begs to be remembered, but the man who leaves a comfortable void, a space that doesn't hurt but calls out. The question was never whether she'll miss you. That question holds you hostage. The real question is different. It's whether you're becoming the kind of man who naturally leaves a void, effortlessly, without demands, without speeches, because when that happens, the dynamic changes on its own, and you notice. Not because she says so, but because the behavior changes, the interest shifts, the energy returns differently. If this process touched something deep inside you, mark it in some way. Not as a request, but as a statement. Perhaps by writing something simple, something like "I accept," "I change now," or "I stop begging." Not to prove anything, but to seal a moment. Because the next part delves even deeper into this turning point and demands precisely this silent decision.